Hello, everybody. I'm Doug Anderson, Artistic Director of the Opera Company of Middlebury. You probably have noticed that our fall productions recently have been devoted to American composers. We looked at Tom Chippillo's wonderfully powerful Glory Denied, Derek Wang's very funny but very timely Scalia Ginsburg, Jorge Martin's Interlopers. But it occurred to us that we can honor American composers, but they don't necessarily have to be contemporary ones. We have a great history in this country of wonderful composers going all the way back to George Gershwin. So we decided to focus on the fellow who's probably our most famous composer, and this is Leonard Bernstein. It gave us a bit of an issue because he is so incredibly versatile that if you really want to tell the story of his life, one thing doesn't quite tell the story. Let me just go over this remarkable life. He's of course a composer. He's a composer of Broadway musicals, On the Town, New York, New York, a wonderful town. That's Leonard Bernstein. He wrote songs, he wrote symphonies, he wrote orchestral pieces, a popular song. He wrote a mass that was performed at the Vatican and elsewhere. He's also famously a concert pianist, playing everything from jazz to classical music. He's a writer, he's a lyricist. In fact, the piece of his we're going to do, he is also the lyricist as well as the composer. He was famously a teacher and a mentor. He supported young musicians. And I don't know, some of you are going to remember watching the Young People's concerts, which from 58 to 67 were on national television. I remember sitting in my living room watching him take us through Peter and the Wolf and being absolutely enthralled by it. And of course, famously a conductor of the New York Philharmonic from the 58 to 67, and having conducted all over the world. And his biggest legacy, I think, is that he liked all kinds of music. And this was new and different for a classical music composer and conductor. He kind of eliminated distinctions between high and low, between classical music and popular music. All music was for all people. And that was a very American and very sort of democratic way of looking at music, but he truly loved it all. And we will see in all of his compositions, there are all kinds of different influences that somehow get funneled through his sensibility and all seem to be of a piece. I remember, you can find this online, it's a wonderful piece where he's sitting in the early 60s talking to the classical music audience about why they should be listening to the Beatles. That the Beatles, he says, are musically incredibly complex and wonderful. And I know you don't think those long-haired guys are your thing, but I really recommend you listen to the Beatles. That's the kind of sort of democratic, taking in everything, small c Catholic kind of tastes that he had. And that was one of the great things he brought to his music and to the American stage. Stravinsky put it best. He called Bernstein a musical department store. That is, anything you're looking for, you can find it in Bernstein. So there's so much here that we thought just doing one piece wasn't going to be enough. So we've put together actually what we're calling a Bernstein Festival, which has a number of components, and they're all going to speak to each other. And I think if you see several of these events, you're going to come away with a much deeper and better understanding of this remarkable career. We're going to start with a documentary film. It's called The Gift of Music. It's a wonderful film because it has all this vintage footage of him conducting, of him working with people. He really comes to life in this video and also talks about his Broadway career and his personal life. I think this is important that we have that context of the whole canvas before we see all the individual things he's created. So we're offering this for free. We want you all to see it. So on Wednesday, September 24th, we're showing this video. Just remind you all of just how explosively he came onto the American scene. Here's something I found in line, just very quickly, sort of talking about that extraordinary moment in American musical history.
I was assistant conductor at the time, and it just so happened that both the music director and the guest conductor, one was indisposed and the other was out of town, so Bernstein had to do the concert on just a couple hours' notice.
Bruno Walter, who was to have conducted this afternoon, is ill, and his place will be taken by the young American-born assistant conductor of the Philharmonic Symphony, Leonard Bernstein.
It's a very complicated concert, and he's only 26. So to see him come out there, it's just one of these stories where he sees the bull by the horns, and he was a sensation, and that's really what catapulted his career.
So we're kicking off the festival that night at 6:30 with a reception, kind of an opening reception for the festival. It'll be happening in the Rothrock Theater. It'll be a lot of fun. There'll be food, there'll be drink, followed by Filippo Chiabatti giving a talk at 7, and then the film playing at 7:30. It's going to be a lovely festive night, and I hope you'll be there. We will follow that on the 25th, Thursday, with West Side Story, one of the 5 greatest musicals ever written. Fascinating story of how it came to be. I think it is, well, here we're talking about the many musical influences. It's all in that score. There is Latin music, there is jazz music, there is pop music, there's a little Puccini in there as well. And yet somehow he's brought it all together into a kind of seamless whole. I think it's the best transfer of a Broadway musical to film. It respects the original but uses video to take it beyond what it was on the stage. It had a real dream team of creators. It had Stephen Sondheim, age 27, writing the lyrics. Arthur Lawrence, a famous writer of film and plays, writing the book. Somebody named Jerome Robbins, legendary American choreographer who worked with the American Ballet Theater doing the choreography. And it was a huge hit. It was a huge hit. And I love the way music, dance, song, all come together in an integrated way to tell this story, to tell this amazing story, based, of course, on the story of Romeo and Juliet, but put in the Upper West Side, in the slums of Upper West Side, New York in the 1950s. I will be giving the pre-show talk, which I'm happy to do. And I just wanted to show a clip because I think what's really absolutely extraordinary is that it has preserved Jerome Robbins' choreography, which is seen throughout. He really changed the way we stage Broadway musical with this musical. It's the musical that changed everything. And it's preserved in this video, which is wonderful. So I just want to play a short clip where the gang, the Jets, are walking around the streets of the West Side, intimidating people, bullying people. And at one point they're walking down the street, one starts to snap his fingers, others kind of join in, and then one does this move. What is it? It's kind of stay out of my way. And then suddenly they're all doing it, and then it erupts into the most explosive, wonderful dance scene you've ever seen. Absolutely thrilling. And that carries on, the Robbins touch, all the way through the piece. So let's just take a very brief look at West Side Story. You can watch this at home on TV. You should see it on a big screen. It was made for a big screen. We have a huge screen here at Town Hall Theater, an amazing sound system. This is the way you should see West Side Story. And if you haven't seen it in years, you should come back and revisit it again. It really is an American masterpiece. We will follow that with his operetta, we don't know what to call it, Candide, which was written in 1956. Candide has, again, an amazingly varied score, everything from Gilbert and Sullivan through to classical music through to Broadway. But it's always been a bit of a problem child in that, of course, it's based on Voltaire's book, which is just episodic. It's a bunch of short stories that take place all over the world. They're hardly connected. They take place in the middle of the ocean, some of these scenes. And how to sort of wrangle that into a coherent story for Broadway, well, it took a lot of doing, and it was constantly being rewritten. And you can see there's about 14 different lyricists were brought in to quote unquote fix Candide. People like Dorothy Parker was brought in at one point. Lillian Hellman was brought in at one point. Stephen Sondheim, still a kid, was brought in to try to fix it. So there are many different Candides, but the definitive version of it was done by the Opera Company of Middlebury, without a doubt. Some of you might remember this, but during COVID, when people weren't coming to the theater, many opera companies said, well, we have to do something, so they resorted to Zoom or recording, videotaping their productions. But often that simply meant pointing a camera at a production. It's a stage production, but there's a camera, and it's a sort of bad copy of a stage production. Well, we thought that if we were going to get into video, this new art form, we had to do video as well as we do opera. So we went into training with a wonderful cinematographer named Tim Joy, and we learned about green screen, and we learned about rear projection, and we learned about drones, and we learned about all the exciting ways we could take new technology to retell this story in a kind of eye-popping way. Our version, which we released during COVID, was a huge hit. I got raves from Tokyo, from Paris, from London, and in the Opera Review. We put a lot of work in this. We turned this theater into a TV studio during COVID, and everybody agrees it's remarkable work. Well, anyway, we now have the rights to show it again during this festival, and we're really excited about it. If you haven't seen it, you have to see it. If you've seen it before, you might want to revisit it. It's extraordinary. It's got an extraordinary cast of OCM alums. I'll just show you a quick clip of how we used what we were learning about video production to tell the story in new, extremely funny ways. So here's Quinn Bernegger, who's been in several of our shows, happened to be a Middlebury College graduate now, has a wonderful career going, singing the song El Dorado. He's in El Dorado, he stumbled into this mountain valley, and it's the most wonderful place in the world. Everything's free, everything's cheap, everything's wonderful, the sheep are made of gold. He should be happy, but he's not, because he's missing one thing, and that is the love of his life. And so he says to the people of El Dorado, I've got to leave. No one's ever wanted to leave El Dorado anymore. But they were good people. They said, okay, we will invent a machine to carry you over the mountains. And then the narrator, who happens to be former Vermont Governor Jim Douglas, looks at the camera and says, a machine to carry you over the mountains? How can that possibly be? Well, you see our interpretation of that in this clip. Quinn Bernegger singing in El Dorado.
They gave me home, they called me friend, they taught me how to live in grace. Seasons passed without an end in that sweet and blessed place, but I grew sad and could not stay. Without my love, my heart grew cold, so they sadly sent me on my way with gracious gifts of gems and gold. Goodbye, they said, we pray you may safely cross the sea. Go, they said, and may you find a bride to be. Then past the jungle fountain, along the silver shore, I've come by sea and mountain to be with my love once more. To be with my love once more.
Isn't that marvelous? The whole show is that kind of eye-popping fun. I really, really recommend seeing Candide. And it's a marvelous score by Leonard Bernstein. So we get to our main event. As I say, I've been wanting for some time to do his rarely seen opera, Trouble in Tahiti. Again, it's a score that incorporates a lot of different influences, but something new in the 1950s, and that is, believe it or not, the television jingle. Good to the Last Drop, and all the kinds of songs we were hearing in tight harmony on television and the radio, which promised us a better life if we bought that coffee, if we bought that sofa, if we bought that washer. And so he creates and he writes the lyrics for Trouble in Tahiti, which is a story of a relationship in trouble. But it's a new kind of relationship because it's a suburban one. We really didn't have suburbs until after World War II. But then we had Levittown, people fleeing the inner city, and all of these people who were living in a place. And he saw it as the advent of America slipping into consumerism and slipping into a kind of superficiality. Yes, if you have the perfect house, and you have the perfect couch, and you have the perfect ice cream, and you have the perfect coffee pot, shouldn't that make you happy? well, maybe you wake up one day and say, that's not enough. That's not enough. And that's what this couple is experiencing in this. It's funny, but it's a very serious story, and it's a critique of American consumerism, I think, long before the late 50s and 60s, when everybody was talking about that. Bernstein was onto it early. We have this wonderful cast of alumni from our company: Olga Perez, who's been in many shows, Patrick Bessenbacher, who hit all of those high Cs recently in Fille de Regiment, a new singer named Kenny Stavert, who just sang in West Side Story in another production. It'll all be conducted by Filippo Chiabatti, our maestro. So I would like to just play one song for you, one bit of one song, to see that it's jangly, it's jazzy, but it's also quite intense. And at one point, the woman, Dinah, does something fairly new. She goes and sees a therapist because she doesn't understand why her life isn't perfect and wonderful. And she relates a song, the famous song from this show called There Is a Garden, a beautiful aria where she's recounting a dream she has of a kind of perfection that she's never found in her life. Let's take a look.
There is a garden, come with me, come with me, a shining garden, come and see, come and see. Their love will teach us harmony and grace, harmony and grace. Then love will lead us to a quiet place.
So once again, we will open at 6:30. There will be talks by experts who really know Bernstein and the work. And I'm just going to name them right now. Helen Lyons, who's a marvelous soprano, who also you hear her lovely voice often on Vermont Public Radio. Nathaniel Liu, who's our choral director, but also is the conductor of the Counterpoint Ensemble in Burlington and plays all over Vermont. And Dr. Daniel Simon, who teaches opera at Middlebury College. So it's an amazing group of people to comment on this particular work. And I know you're going to love seeing it, and it's going to stay with you for a long time, I think. Because it's a one act, we've added to, we're going to open it with a kind of a curtain raiser that we're calling the Bernstein Songbook, in which the 5 singers in the opera are going to take us through the whole career of songs, going all the way back to On the Town and Wonderful Town, through Candide, through West Side Story, through the songs from the Mass. And so we will see them in various guises singing all of these wonderful songs, the whole career. And that too then puts the opera itself in a certain kind of context. I think it's going to be a lovely night, a unique night, and I don't think you'll get a chance to see this opera again, so I really recommend it. So this is all in 2 weeks' time. We're doing all of this. I think it's exciting. I'm excited to work with the singers and all of this. And it's really a wonderful way to start our 23rd season. And I hope you'll be part of it. Thanks a lot.